these 30 years that you've been on ESPN, I have often felt for you because Duke obviously is always pretty to very good, and you have to figure out how to navigate through picking for or against Duke. And I've always wondered how frustrating it occasionally gets for you. You handle it great, but does it ever torment you or eat at you that you just can't win picking for or against Duke?
No. I mean, honestly, Skip, I mean, you've been in this business longer than I have. The best I can do is be fair and honest. And I don't think fair is that difficult. I think fair is really easy. The hard part is bias and being unfair. I don't play for Duke anymore. And everybody went to school somewhere. Of course, I love Duke, and I loved being there. But I don't care whether they win or lose. That's their problem. I'm not involved in that. And I have too much respect for these other programs that, you know, they let you in, you see behind the scenes, you see how they do it. And so I respect the competition and the competitors too much. You know, when Duke's the better team, you pick them. And now that's our job, is to pick them. That was never our job years ago. But when they're not, you say so. And hopefully over the years, you build up credibility doing that. If you don't, if people are, you know, if it's a reasonable criticism, I'll listen to it. But I'm not going to listen to some unreasonable stuff about he went to Duke, therefore, you know, you can't trust this or whatever. They can feel how they want to feel, but that doesn't make it true. But I've never worried about it. That's never been an issue for me. I understand the way this business works, and I don't have a problem with fans. I did have one experience that I'll tell you about really briefly. So years ago, this is probably 20 years ago, I spoke at a Duke alumni event, and right before that was I think it was the 2001. So it's longer than 20 years. 2001 Final Four, and I had picked Maryland to beat Duke in the semifinals of that. And they were up 22 at halftime, and Duke wound up coming back and won. Then they beat Arizona for the national championship. So when I opened it up for Q&A, one of the Duke alums had said, "Hey, you picked Maryland to beat Duke." And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And he said that was a bad pick. I said, "Yep, it was. Duke won. You're right. It was incorrect." So he said, "Well, that should teach you never to pick against Duke again." And so I, you know, that's fine. He's just a fan, nice guy and everything. So I said, "Sir, do you mind if I ask you a question?" I said, "You went to Duke, obviously. Do you pick Duke every year to win the championship?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And he was about 70 years old. And I said, "Well, congratulations. You're now 4 for 70.
That's right.
I mean, it
Bingo.
doesn't.
Touche.
You know, yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, if you're going to pick them every time, then what's the value in that? Like, I thought Maryland was going to win, and you could argue they should have, being up 22 at halftime. But so what? I don't like picking games because I don't know who's going to win. If I knew the team was going to win all these games, I would go to Vegas and I would quit my job in a second, and I would just be by the pool with a drink in my hand, raking it in.
Yet you're required to pick every single March Madness game.
Yeah,
right?
and some years I do really well. Like this year's one of them. I did really well.
You did.
Other years you don't do so well because we don't know. And so I'm not running around saying, "Hey, look what I just picked." I don't, you know, if people want to use the picks in their pool, use them. If they don't. If they want to blame me for what I say, blame me. If they want to take credit, use it and take credit for it on their own, go ahead. I don't kind of understand how, well, I know how it happened. But, you know, years ago, I was called a color commentator. Now I'm an analyst. and we were never asked years ago to pick winners.
No.
We were asked what's going to be important in this game. What should we look for? What are these teams' strengths? What's the game going to turn on? Give us the keys to the game. And now all anybody seems to want to know is who's going to win. And so I give my opinion on that, and I try to do it without reservation. Like, I'm not going to say, well, I think this team's going to win, but you never know. Like, I don't do it that way. I say, I think this team's going to win. Okay.
But Jay, your opinion is as qualified an opinion as there is out there for public consumption.
Well, that's kind of you to say, but nobody's qualified to pick these winners. These things are like, I have a great respect for people who analyze football. I don't understand football. I love it, but I don't know what a nickel defense versus cover two. And I don't know all that crap. But like, I did watch the Super Bowl, and I heard a bunch of them pick Kansas City, and Kansas City got drilled. And they know football. We don't know who's going to win these games. I don't know who's going to win the 100-yard dash in the Olympics or the 100-meter dash. I don't know.
Yet, Jay, I will say this. I do know the NFL pretty well, and I'm much better at picking NFL games. I in fact, had Philadelphia from before the year started to win the Super Bowl, and I'm usually pretty good on the NFL. And I'm terrible at March Madness. I'm a pool fool. It's bracket racket, because this is the most aptly nicknamed event in all of sports, because it is truly madness, because there are 18, 19-year-olds thrown into crazy situations, Boise, Idaho, wherever the first round game might be, at a crazy time, very early, very late, crazy shooting backgrounds, different referees, only 5 fouls. The games are shorter than NBA games, as you well know, and madness ensues, because that's hard to pick. It's way harder to pick these college basketball games, to me.
Yeah, and I think you're right, but I just think it's the nature of the game. All those things that you mentioned are certainly factors, but what I would liken it to is golf. That we can sit and try to say, okay, Tiger Woods is the best golfer, or Scotty Scheffler now, if you want to get more current. He's the favorite to win the Masters. All right, that's difficult. It's a difficult proposition. But then you take it to the world match play, and you go, all right, who's going to win this particular match? When it's match play, that's basketball. Like, basketball is the equivalent of match play. And,
yeah, it is. That's well said.
If these were 7-game series, my predictions would be a hell of a lot better. Just like, we could say, okay, in the early 90s, like, the Lakers were better than the Sixers. They should win. Then the Sixers win game 1 on the road. How are we going to account for that? We can't. and it's similar. I think it's similar in the tournament. And this year we had a lot of chalk, and I think I was about to say everybody. There are a lot of people out there saying, well, this shows NIL in the portal, like the mid-majors are dead. And you go, wait a minute. 2 years ago, Florida Atlantic and San Diego State were in the Final Four in the NIL era, and everybody said, the earth is flat. Now the big shots aren't going to dominate anymore. It's all equal. Like, how did that change in 2 years? One data point doesn't make a trend.
Interesting.
And some years we have a bunch of upsets. Other years we have this. This is the first time, and only second time ever, first time since 2008, all the number 1 seeds have advanced to the Final Four. It happened in 2008. That's precedent. And there was no NIL, no portal. I mean, it happens once in a while. And sometimes we have 2 mid-majors in the Final Four. And we're not going to have the same result year after year. It's just not built that way.
Got it.